We continue on Chronicle Live, presented by Farmers Insurance, in time for our Chronicle conversation. We saw a basketball guru, the Pete Newell Story. Well, it all started a few years back when a book was written by Bruce Jenkins of the San Francisco Chronicle. He's a columnist there. It's called A Good Man, and then it is now turned into a documentary by Doug Harris. He's the producer of that, called Basketball Guru. But, Bruce, I want to start with you. A Good Man, the title of your book. Define Pete Newell.
Well, in my mind, he's probably the greatest basketball coach that we've ever had in this country. I've been told that by many people, including Bobby Knight. People like Jerry West and Oscar Robertson still can't believe that Pete Newell beat him way back when with a bunch of guys nobody ever heard of. He was an innovator. He won championships from scratch. He was a teacher. He coached the 1960 Olympic team. It's a long, long story. But basically, when it comes to innovation, the teaching angle, and just raw accomplishment, I have to think he's right up there. And I was going to say, I was a Cal student in the late 60s, and when Pete was the athletic director, I got to know him a little bit, and that kind of triggered it for me, because he's such a humble guy, and there was never a big commotion about him, and especially at Cal in those days, there was a lot of turmoil, and his name kind of faded, and he's not quite so well remembered as he should be.
Well, we're going to get to that in just a second. So from the book, we then move to the documentary. Doug, you put this together. How did you get through this journey? We heard the voice of Bill Walton, who was speaking in that piece that we just saw from the trailer. But what about the journey and the people that wanted to talk about Pete Newell?
Well, the cast for Basketball Guru is basically Pete's decision. Pete told me, everyone, that he wanted to tell his story. And as a documentary filmmaker, you usually choose who you want in the film. But in this particular situation, Coach knew when he was here with us, he gave me a list of people that he wanted me to meet and talk to about his story. And it was a hell of a journey, I'll tell you that, going all across the country. But it was really great for me, being a former basketball player and someone who just loves the sport, to get an opportunity to travel and get a chance to meet some of the most illustrious people in all of basketball. It was something that I always treasure.
Who are some of the names? Give me some names that we get to see in this documentary.
Well, I consider this probably one of the greatest untold basketball stories of all time. And the film includes, people like Jerry West, Oscar Robertson, Pat Riley, Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski, Jerry Colangelo, Bill Walton, Kareem Jabbar. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And these people were all impacted by Pete Newell. Bruce Jenkins is in the film as well as Pete Newell's biographer. So it's just a wonderful film with an illustrious cast of people.
People think now in basketball that the Dream Team was 1992 in the Olympics. The original Dream Team was when, Bruce?
Well, it was 1960.
Yeah.
You had Jerry West and Oscar Robertson and Walt Bellamy, all the great stars from college, and Pete coached that team. And as we've seen with ensuing Dream Teams, it's kind of hard to get 5 guys to play a real fundamental style, but Pete would get these guys in the practice court, Wes and Big O, and they'd play for half an hour without shooting.
Really?
And just to get the idea of sharing, and of course, they weren't challenged really, especially in 1960. They kicked everybody's butt, but I mean, they still played the game the way it was supposed to be played, and they were richer for it.
There are some icons in this business. When you go to Los Angeles, you think John Wooden. When you go to Chicago, you think Ray Meyer. Maybe in Washington, D.C., it's going to be John Thompson or John Chaney when you go over to Philadelphia. Is Pete Newell, first, is he in the discussion with those guys? But if so, is he thought of in the same way here in the Bay Area? Well,
he's absolutely in the discussion. I mean, before John Wooden got Lou Alcindor and Mike Warren and on to Kareem and everything else, Lou Alcindor, Bill Walton, he was playing Pete Newell straight up with basically recruits from mostly California. Well, Pete beat John Wooden the last 8 times they played. 8-0. See you later.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm out of here. And Wooden was really pissed. They were heated. They were heated rivals. It's as we have both discovered in our research, and Pete got the better of him, and it just goes on and on like that. But it was a long time ago. This is 1959, 1960, and the Wooden stuff took place in more than the mid-50s. And it's I guess for a good example is when Comcast did the top 20 legends, it was a great list. Everybody on the list is.
You can make an argument for everyone on the list, all 20.
But when I didn't see Pete on there, I go, damn, once again. You know,
overlooked right
yeah.
here.
And I think he's the best coach the Bay Area has ever had in any sport. I mean,
really?
Walsh and Tara Vanderveer and down the line, I really think that what he did, and Bill Walsh would be the first to tell you that. He was the biggest fan of Pete Newell you'll ever find.
I think Tara Vanderveer not on that list as well.
That's right,
coaches,
yeah.
And she should have been. Doug, back to the documentary. Basketball Guru, when you come up with that name, did people tell you different stories of the way Pete innovated the game or the way he might have just affected their lives?
I think it's a combination of both, because the majority of the people that I talk to, you know, about basketball, Pete Newell as it related to basketball, they were more genuine in their discussion about the impact that he had on their overall development and growth as young adults or as aspiring coaches. And I think that Pete's legacy transcends through basketball, but he really touched people in a very special way that we don't see much of today. And, you know, also the simple fact that Pete Newell was the very first coach to win basketball's Triple Crown, I think is a great accomplishment. I mean, there's only been two others that have done that, and that is Dean Smith and, help me out.
And Bobby.
Dean Smith and Bobby Knight.
Bob Knight called him the best coach of all time. And the Triple Crown, by the way, is the NCAA, the Olympics, and the NIT when it was the big deal.
And when Pete won it in 1949, there was no question that it was essentially the national championship. All the great teams were there. He took a ragtime team out of USF back to the Garden and came home with a title. I mean,
that's amazing.
It really is. And just to speak to what he did for people as lives, he coached at Michigan State before he came to Cal, 4 or 5 years, and they didn't win anything. He was dealing with nothing. They just built the new basketball arena.
Jennison Fieldhouse at the time.
Yeah, that's right. But those guys get together every year. I went to one of the reunions. Pete wasn't even there, couldn't make it. 20 guys getting together to talk about how great their lives are because of Pete Newell, having nothing to do with basketball.
That says an awful lot right there.
Yeah.
So the documentary, Basketball Guru, where can people see this?
Well, right now we're having a special preview tomorrow night at USF's Presentation Theater, and it's just, you know, a special gathering to, you know, show the film. And the film is actually going to be part of Pete Newell Appreciation Night, which will be Thursday night, during the USF Dons home game against conference newcomer BYU. That night is going to be proclaimed Pete Newell Appreciation Night on the USF campus up on the hilltop. And we're looking for, you know, everyone to come out and be a part of that festive event.
Part of fascinating Bay Area sports history. Great stuff. Doug Harris, the producer of Basketball Guru. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bruce Jenkins,
Thank
still
you,
a
Jim.
great read, a good man. The Pete Newell Story.
Thanks so much.
You can still get it. Thanks for joining us here on Chronicle Live. We appreciate it. When Chronicle Live, presented by Farmers Insurance, continues, is it time for Billy Beane of the A's to think about a divorce? We'll explain later. That gets a chuckle out of Bruce Jenkins here on Valentine's Day. But straight ahead, we'll tell you where Tiger Woods is playing next. That is coming up in The Scoop with Brody Brazil right here on Chronicle Live.